desire to dream. What do you mean? Take a good look at my life. Yeah, my future it gleams. Desire to dream. What do you mean? I cannot lose, cause I got God on my team.
Welcome back to another episode of Desire to Dream podcast. I am your host, Lo Wilder, and man, I am excited for today's podcast episode. In fact, this is our second take, and so we're going to make sure we get this thing locked and loaded because he's going to unpack some phenomenal advice, tips, so you can get your entrepreneurial movements, whatever it is that you're working on. You're going to get some good information today. My man is equipped with ChatGPT, technology, mathematician, the professor. I got my King Derek Seymore on today. What's going on, King Derek? How you doing, brother?
What's up, Lo? Man, thank you so much for inviting me back for an encore performance. I guess that means I did okay the first time.
Yes, that's for sure. That's for sure, man. Hey, man, welcome, man. My brother from Jacksonville, Florida. This man is a entrepreneur. He's a coach, a speaker. But your math teacher is your day-to-day job, right? So for those that don't know, man, give us a little backstory of who you are and kind of what you got working.
Originally from Savannah, Georgia. So, over here on the southeast, that's where we're rocking. I'm a little bit north of you. I'm a little bit south of Savannah. It's about 2 hours north of me to get to Savannah, about 2 hours south of me to get to you down there in Orlando.
Right.
But yeah, grew up humble means to working class parents who, the good times, scraping and scrapping to survive, know. But we made it. They raised me and my two younger sisters. Again, modest means, but they always did the best they can. They always put food on the table, kept the lights on. Didn't grow up in a background where necessarily education was pushed. Again, being a little older, I was born in the 60s and, in the 70s, if you can kind of imagine the environment that I was growing up in that era in America. A little black boy coming up from a home that wasn't necessarily an advantage home, if you will. Nobody was necessarily putting a spotlight on me. So I was surviving. I made it through school. I tell people jokingly, but seriously, I barely graduated high school. I came out of it with a 2.11 GPA, which is funny because my mom always read to me as a kid. So she was an avid reader. She read. I have vivid memories every Sunday morning. My mom going to get the Sunday paper and pulling out that big color, comic section, and she would read the comics to me every Sunday morning. And so that sparked in me a love of reading. And having the benefit of growing up pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-social media, books and playing outside was my escape. And so that laid a foundation for me of underlying, although I didn't understand at the time, the importance of reading and words, and which led to the speaking and things that we'll talk on later. But that's kind of my humble background. Again, now residing in Jacksonville, Florida, after being dropped off here by the Navy back in 1995. And so we can talk about my Navy career a little bit as we go.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's interesting, like, as I know who you are today and looking back and saying, what you mean you barely graduated high school? And it's interesting because a lot of life learners, you kind of see that they have that in common, right? And maybe sometimes it's because what's being taught isn't really entertaining the mind or challenging the student or things like that. Now you're a math teacher, but one of the things that I love hearing stories about your teachings and students that you're working with is that you're not just teaching math, and I want you to break that down for the audience because you be dropping some nuggets, man. But you're teaching life lessons. And I remember when you and Dana was talking about being math teachers, life is a math problem, to solve, right? So kind of talk a little bit about that, in that sense.
Yeah, and shout out to our brother Dana Harris, who's a math educator up in North Carolina. And so hopefully he catches this episode so he can catch the shout out.
For sure.
But yeah, I want to I literally have signs up in my room. It's my standard quote that says, "If the only thing you learn in my class is math, you're not paying attention." That has been my go-to for, and again, this is my 24th year of teaching. So for 2 decades, I let them know, look, when you step into this room, we're going to get to this math, we're going to get to these problems. But if I'm not making it make sense to you in the context of the world that you have to occupy, I feel like I'm falling short.
Right.
So the teaching of the math may be my job, but the imparting of these lessons and wisdoms to help grow these young minds is my calling. That is my mission. I tell them, being a math teacher, that's my undercover.
Right.
That's my Clark Kent. That's my Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
But
yeah. You put on the cape, you ready to, and then you just unload on them. Yeah, man. 100%. So with that being said, right, a lot of the youth, I'm sure there's people that are listening to this podcast episode have children, whether they're teenagers now or they're going, they're in elementary and going into high school, middle school. What is some of the things that you're seeing as a common trend of what's going on in that demographic, and then some solutions possibly that can help, give them some advice to kind of help their parenting?
Absolutely, for sure. So I tell people, when I look at these kids, I realize they're literally wired different. Like they're wired. They're not us. They're not growing up in the same world we grew up in. They have far more access to technology and information than we ever could have dreamed of, at their age. And it's literally shaped their perceptions of the world in a different way. And I tell my fellow educators all the time, we have to stop trying to prepare these kids for the future we used to have.
Wow.
We're looking at the world through our lens and our perception of what things are. And yes, not everything has changed, but the methodologies have changed so much. And so I tell this story about my son, who's a senior this year. He's 17. He's working his way to get out of high school, and he's doing much better than Dad did, by the way.
Shout out to young man.
Shout out to that. We kind of made sure of that. I took my lessons learned and made sure to sprinkle that back down.
Right.
But I remember when he was about 2 years old, and we went hard on reading. Once I understood that some of the stats and the way the data is used in reading, it said can negatively impact kids early in life. If you don't understand, the ties between education and the system, we went really, really hard on reading.
Wow.
So until he was about 4 years old, he didn't get a Batman, Superman, Ninja Turtle, nothing. He got books, he got letters. We played leapfrog videos on loop. If parents of young kids, especially small toddlers before they enter pre-K, kindergarten, work on reading comprehension skills with you. Read to your child, buy them books, let them listen to those leapfrog videos, let them, totally just devour anything about phonics and enunciation, because reading trickles over into every other subject. At some point, you're sitting in my math class trying to do a word problem, and you're telling people you're bad at math, and that's really not the issue. The issue is you're bad at reading. You have no reading comprehension skills, so you can't get through my word problems. And so we started him out really, really young. I'm talking before he could hold his head up. We were playing those leapfrog videos on loop.
Wow.
But I distinctly remember this one incident where he was up, he was kind of walking out, and he was watching some Bubble Guppy's Backyardigans show, something on TV. And he kind of waddled over to the television screen and started doing this on it. Yeah, one of them big Sony floor mics. He starts doing this, and he turned and looked at me and said, "Daddy broken." Daddy broken.
Right. And
it took me a second to catch on, and it hit me. Oh, he's trying to interact with the glass. He thinks all glass is touchscreen. And it hit me. It's like, in his world, glass is interactive. He's never known a world where there wasn't touchscreen glass. His entire, and at 2, it was already shaping his worldview of how things should work. And I realized, man, this kid is wired different. He's not going to be like me. He's not growing up in the world I grew up in. Yeah. And so from then forward, that really made me start looking at all these kids different, and understanding that we have to really be intentional about how we're trying to shape these kids. And it's tough because many adults are if they're not tech savvy or they're leery of technology and stuff, that's shaping how they're trying to interact with these kids. But in the meantime, these kids got the whole world in their pocket, literally.
For sure. How do you integrate, and I know we're going to get into your coaching and speaking, but how do you integrate technology in your class so that you are, that teacher that people are like, man, he's hip, he knows what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, at first it starts with self-education. So I've always been a tinkerer since I was little. Shout out to my mom's dad, my grandfather, who bought me a set of Craftsman tools when I was 12. I was always a tinker. I would get in and figure stuff out. I get a toy and play with it for a minute, and then I'm unlocking that sucker, trying to see how this works. Why is that spring where it is? Yeah. So as society moved forward, that translated into computers. I can remember clearly the night. One night, I was up late on the ship. We're in the middle of the ocean. I had nothing to do, and we have these computers down there in the shop. And I said, "Oh, there's that thing called PowerPoint. I wonder what that's about." And I remember sitting there maybe 2 hours one night just kind of playing with it. What could it do? What could it do? And teaching myself how to use PowerPoint before you really, there was no YouTube then to go search and watch a video. Right. And so I began to tinker with software and learn how, these programs worked and improve my skills. So for my fellow educators out there, you have to embody and embrace this technology in a way so that you're comfortable with it. So that when these things come with these kids, you can kind of guide them. But what happens is when it's a weakness and it's a non-skill or talent, we can shy away from that. And there are educators out there. It's almost like they don't want to be exposed to the fact they don't know these things. So they literally try to insulate their classroom from it. Put that phone away. Don't touch it. And it's because they're not comfortable with it to be in front of the issue. Yeah. So they're going to try to make a blackout zone for technology in my room. Wow. And again, what world are you trying to prepare these kids for? What job are they going to go into where they're not going to have some level of tech? Dude came to fix my wife's car windshield and broke out an iPad.
That's so true. And, and as I'm thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about how I'm utilizing technology and advancing, what I'm doing with coaching, mortgages, podcasting, right? So I want to shift a little bit to ChatGPT because, shout outs to CB Phillips, who introduced it to me back in 21.
Another great king.
I believe. Yes. Another great king. But CB introduced me to ChatGPT before it hit the mainstream. I was in Atlanta, this was 4 years ago, and he was like, "You don't know what get on ChatGPT." CB's in San Francisco. He's in the tech IT world. But you brought it to the next level. And so when we started talking, and he was like, "Man, my ChatGPT, I trained my ChatGPT," and I'm like, what is he talking about? You helped me with that, so I want to give you a shout out for that. Sure. Talk a little bit about how to leverage ChatGPT and how it could impact everybody, in their field. It doesn't matter whether you're an educator, whether you're sales, but man, you're the ChatGPT king.
First things first, don't be afraid of it. It is a tool. Sure. Yes, some of the rules are being written about, what to do and what not to do. But I'm of the mindset of if I sit on the sidelines and wait for them to give me the green light and the go ahead and the permission to embrace this technology, I will be behind. I can't remember who it was, but there was a CEO who made the comment that AI isn't going to take people's jobs. People know how to use AI is going to take people's jobs.
I read that deal. Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
It's like saying you want to be a truck driver, but you don't have a CDL license.
Right.
You need to understand how to use the tools. So some basic things. First of all, it's not Google. It's not merely a search engine. It's a learning algorithm, and it can learn you. But so you have to teach it and train it, like you said. I also gave mine a name. I gave mine a voice. I tweaked the voice. Mine is a 50-something-year-old African American male with 80 sensibilities who grew up in the South. I basically made it a digital me. And so when I'm talking to it, when I'm conversing with it, it's a language that I understand and I can appreciate. Sure. My coaching tips, things that I need that are specific to what I do, I've infused it in there. So when it's talking back to me, it's using my language. And so I taught it that, so I didn't have to keep translating every time. Right. If I give people a big tip when using it, because again, the deal with it is people are afraid of it. Well, it's not really me and it's not authentic. You have to train it to be authentically you.
For sure.
You have to train it. You have to tell it. And if you tell it, it'll learn. It is, again, it's a learning algorithm. It's learning you. It's working with you.
Right.
And so one of my go-tos that I use now is when I'm writing a big prompt and there's no too much details. You can drop 15 pages worth of details in there if you need to, and it'll help you kind of sort through that. And it basically becomes an external brain to yourself that you can conversate with to help you get good ideas. So here's my go-to tip that I'll give people. Whatever prompt you type, whatever it is you're trying to get it to come up with, at the very end of it, type these words. Ask me all the questions that you need to in order to help me develop a winning strategy. Just ask it that.
Right.
So you type in your prompt.
So type in the prompt, and then at the very end, you're saying that. And
then it'll ask you a series of questions. It might be 8, 9, 10, 12 questions. And what I'm telling ChatGPT to do is make me dig deeper. Make me go deeper into my own question. Make me give you more details so that when it finally spits out that result, it's got even more of my essence in it because I've told it to ask me. And sometimes it asks me things I didn't think of. Sometimes it asks me, do you want this to be more A or more B?
Right.
And I can think about it. It's one or the other. Or maybe I'll sometimes give me about a combo. Give me about 50-50 of option A and option B. It just makes me just tweak it that little bit more. And it asks really good questions because, again, it's a learning algorithm. It's learning from everything. So imagine, flashback to my older people. You need to do a book report. So you got in your car or hopped on your bicycle and you went to the library, and then you had to go combing through the card catalog, and then you had to walk around and find the books and hope they weren't checked out.
Right. That's right. That checked out part. Yep.
And then you had to read through each book, and you had to write down all your notes. Right. Imagine being able to just go to a one-stop shop and ask your questions and have results that can get you moving in the right direction within 30 seconds.
In seconds.
And it's never 100% what I want.
Yeah.
But if I can get that first 80% knocked out in 30 seconds, and then I can now spend the next hour just refining that last 20. Right. It saves me time. I get the same 24 hours that everybody else does. And so now it's about how much do I value my own time? Yeah. If I have a tool that's going to help me do it faster, I'm going for that tool. And I'll give you this last analogy before I, let you prompt me with the next question. Is it would be as though two people decided they wanted to go from Florida to California, and one person books a flight, and the other person said, "No, I'm walking." And the person who's walking says, "The dude on the plane is cheating."
Right. Yep.
That's basically what it amounts to.
For sure.
It is what it is.
Yeah. It's funny you use the plane analogy. I use the car, the vehicle, like when the first car came up and the person said, I got my horse here. I don't need a car. This horse gets me everywhere I need to go. And it's like, okay, cool. But we're going to California, New York. How long is it going to take for you? I'm already heading back and probably hit 2-3 more cities than you if you're on your horse. And that is why, if you're listening to this audio, if you're listening to this on YouTube, whatever it might be, you have to leverage ChatGPT. But to Darrick's point, you have to train it. And you can tell when people are not training their ChatGPT. You could kind of see it on social media and you're like, that's ChatGPT. But for some that trained it, some that it's a learning algorithm. They're learning your nuances. They learn your sense of humor. It is somewhat scary to the point that we're going to shoot and advance so much further. In the next 10 years, the world is going to look completely different. ChatGPT, AI, it's going to, create so many multi-millionaires. And it kind of, gives me a segue to transition into this next topic. As a educator, you're teaching. That's what we call the 9 to 5 per se. But you're an entrepreneur outside of that. You're a speaker, a coach. How do you leverage that? Because most people make excuses of, your and your father, your husband. You're not a single man with no kids, and your grandfather, right? So you have kids. You're married, great, phenomenal husband, right? I see you travel with your family, like. You're a model, right? And so you're doing all of these things. You're an educator, but you don't just stop there. Like what is it that internal? Is it Navy? Is it just that desire to just want more? Like what is it that he's like, man, I can do more? And I say that because I know there's people listening on this podcast that are like, right. How do you do it? How do people do two things? And so many people are okay with working 2 jobs, working 3 jobs because they clock in, they know what they got to do. Right. But that entrepreneur mindset, it requires a different, train of thoughts.
It comes down to, your goals, and your desires. Like how big is your why? What are you trying to accomplish and what are you trying to reach? And, clearly not knocking anybody's 9 to 5. If that 9 to 5 is meeting what you said you want and what you need, by all means keep doing that. And this is absolutely not a knock on that, but for what God has placed on my heart, for where he's pushing me, the 9 to 5 only gets me a piece of what I need.
Right.
I had to begin to develop and grow and push into these other areas because of the vision that God has given me for where he wants me to go. I can tell you, man, so much crystallized for me during COVID. And I explained to people, for me personally, the blessing of COVID. And I know it was a global catastrophe. And I know many, many lives are lost. And I wouldn't begin to belittle that. But for me in that moment, a gentleman that you and I are both familiar with named Jamal King, who built a real estate empire over the last, several years, decades. Yeah. He dropped the challenge during COVID. He called it the Whole 14 Challenge. And I don't know if you remember that. And then the genesis of the challenge was this. That was back during when you had to quarantine for 12 days. 14 days. If you thought you had COVID, you had to quarantine for 2 weeks, right?
Right.
And so he called it just like you going in a hole. He is a retired Chicago police officer. And so police officers talking about they're going in a hole. So they're on duty, but there's not an active call. So you see the police car sitting over under a shade tree or parked somewhere, and the police officer just kind of sitting there and look like they ain't doing nothing. Well, they're in the hole. Well, it said during that time, he used that time to leverage. Well, if I got to ride around anyway, I might as well pay attention to these properties that I'm passing.
Right.
Might as well take some notes. Like I'm in the car, I'm riding the neighborhoods anyway. Let me just, hey, I'm looking for criminals. I'm also looking for a property I can invest in. So he said, how do you use that time when you can't do the thing that you normally do to actually come out of it better? So he dropped this challenge. If you were quarantined for 2 weeks, how could you come out of those 14 days better? And so when I was sitting home, man, it was such a unique crisis in that, thankfully, none of us were ill at my house. We didn't have any extended family and friends that were ill, so we were all healthy. But it was a disaster where we still had our electricity on. The internet was still functioning.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like a hurricane that comes through and everything's wiped out.
It destroys everything.
So during COVID, man, those months that I was sitting home, I began digesting just huge quantities of people like Dr. Eric Thomas and Les Brown and these motivational speakers. And, started doing, a lot of people pivot their in-person events to virtual online, conferences. So I was able to just sit at home. I didn't have to worry about traveling and taking time off of work. I started participating in these conferences. All of that led to me, joining different organizations, which is where you and I met through Dr. Eric Thomas's Breed University many years ago. And I just found these people that I could grow with, and they didn't have to be in my own city. And we had this thing called Zoom that we could hop on, and I could be talking to anybody anywhere. And man, it's just led to so many different opportunities. So that embracing again of the technology, but taking advantage of what God put in front of me, that elevated me, because I began to embrace these new ideas, these new technologies to grow. And I could say, he wants me to go here, and here's all of these vehicles I can use to get me there.
Yeah.
So that's really been the trajectory, and I'm still on that trajectory.
Yeah. Man, as you were talking about so many things, like I was reflecting back on these past few years, decade, and I get a little upset because when I look at Zoom, man, I had that idea in 2015, bro. Like, you know, when you create, you know, you see something created and you're like, man, that's my idea. Like, legit, like my buddy and I, man, we started a podcast. It was Follow Your Dreams with Coach and Low. And this was back in 2015, 2016. And it was just audio. And I was telling him, because I'm a sports guy and I could see John Clayton doing an interview in his living room. And I'm like, man, there has to be a way that me and you can do this interview in a video. And you know, you're at the comfort of your home. I'm at the comfort at my home. We don't have no broadcasting, none of that. But it has to be a way. We tried
Remember Skype?
There was Skype, but it didn't work, and
it wasn't the same.
And it did not. It wasn't the same. It didn't record. It was to set up Skype, man. You thought you were gonna launch a rocket to space, right? Like, it was so like confusing, man. But right. I had to insert that because now Coach Crane, Jacob Crane, is a part of our King's Accountability Group, and he's the brother that, you know, that I connected with, man, from Hampton University, and we had this podcast. But it's funny when you're saying that, and Breathe University, because he's done some of the coaching as well. One of the things that I wanted to add, that, you know, when COVID happened and I was working, you know, I was one of them jobs selling paint, you know, you still had to show up to work and wear a mask and whatnot. But, you know, I just remember joining Breathe University saying, man, I found my tribe. You know, like, I was always different. You know, I mean, people liked me. I was very likable. I was popular, you know, played football, all that stuff. But I always kind of felt like, man, like I'm different, you know, and people ain't really vibing with me. And when I joined Breathe University and there was 180 people on a call at 6 o'clock in the morning that were all like-minded, I was just blown away. Like, right. Oh my God, I found my tribe. And not only, and this is going to tie us into King's Accountability, because, you know, we pivoted, you know, you were doing King's, we Breathe University started to change a little bit, you know, they were transitioning and changing, and we joined, you know, you told me about King's Accountability. How important is it, right, when you're on this journey of entrepreneurship, when you're on this journey of success and legacy, right? How important is it to find a group of like-minded individuals and the accountability piece?
And man, it's absolutely essential and crucial. Like, again, using me as an example, I didn't grow up in a house where entrepreneurship was even a word. I didn't grow up in a house where going to college was even a concept. So putting myself in what Dr. Thomas calls miracle territory, like, you know, there's a place where miracles happen and you got to go to it. It don't come to you. And so getting around the people who thought differently, now I won't say better, I'll say who just thought differently, who had a different worldview that lined up with where I was beginning to develop in my own heart or somewhere I wanted to go. You got to get around these people. Once you get around the right people, in the right rooms, and the ideas are flowing, you start seeing the secret sauce. Oh, that's how you do this. And oh, this is what you should add here. Oh, you can invest in that. Like, the information is out there. The people who are meant to be in your life for a season or for a lifetime are out there. Well, let me tell you where they're not at. They're not in your living room.
Right. They're not, yeah.
It's about getting out there and not being afraid to get out there and taking your time and doing your due diligence. I'm not saying go out there and blindly trust everybody, but, you know, if you believe, if you got anybody listening to this call, let me look at the camera, anybody listening to this podcast, and you think God has put a calling on your life to do X, you fill in the blanket what you think that thing is. Why would God give you that calling if he wasn't going to give you the resources and the people to help you match that calling?
My goodness.
He's just not going to bundle them up with a nice bow and drop them on your front doorstep. You got to put some work in. You got to go out there and find them. They're out there, but you got to go find them.
That's it. You got to, and you know, and you have to do the work. And again, another good way to transition into this next topic, but, you know, extreme execution. It's it's a flight assessment about personalities, characteristics, things like that I'm going to let you talk about. But you hear this term, a lot of people say, well, I'm I don't like to hang around a lot of people, or I'm introverted, right? But you are a certified coach, extreme execution. I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I know there's probably some new listeners that may not know what that is. So I definitely want you to kind of give a brief overview of it, and how it can help you, right? That superpower to tap in. But if you're introverted, right? Most successful people, like Bill Gates, and a lot of them are introverted, and then if you're an extrovert, you gotta know sometimes to shut your mouth and listen, and also trust other people, because me being a 99D, sometimes I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it my way. Let me do this, and then I push people off, and you don't really get to build a team. But this is desire to dream, right? People have dreams and goals, and you just said it yourself. God placed something in you. He gave you provision, the resources that you need to succeed.
So the title of your podcast is Desire to Dream. But if your desire to dream isn't also matched with the desire to grow and the desire to work, the dream is going to fizzle and die.
Yeah, faith without works is
dead. Faith without works is dead. And people got to understand that part. What the flight assessment does, and it is built on the backbone of the DISC assessment, and you can DISC, you can Google DISC assessment. But what the flight assessment is Eric Thomas and Associates. It's Eric Thomas branded version, and there are many different versions out there of this assessment. But the flight assessment is so unique because there's a narrative and a story that flows through it that really helps you see where you fit in the spectrum when it comes to like personality profiles. And everybody has a personality profile. And in my coaching, I really teach like first of all, it's just about knowing yourself, right? On a truly deep, intimate level. What are your triggers? Like, how do you move? Why are these things my preferences? And you got to remember, if you truly believe, like I believe, God built you this way for a reason.
For sure.
And he built us all different for a reason, because he wanted us to be able to rely on each other and not think any one man or woman had all the solutions and answers, because that's not true, right? This thing about community, this underlying theme of community, we've mentioned several that, Lo and I are both a part of, that building a community requires different types of people coming together and bringing their individual talents and skill sets together to move forward. So in my coaching, first I teach you how to unlock that in yourself and recognize it. And I give you the language and the tools to really embrace that. But then to turn that around and say, oh, that's why my wife thinks that way. That's why my kids are saying that. Oh, that's why my employees are behaving that way. Not to manipulate, but to understand, and then to give you the tools to maybe pivot some of the things that you do and say to bring the best out of those other people. But if you don't understand, one, yourself, and two, you don't understand how other people move, which is what the flight assessment gives you. It gives you a template. It gives you a roadmap, if you will, of understanding these different personality profiles. If you don't understand that, you are kind of flying blind. Yeah. And then everything's just coming from feelings, and there's no facts involved. And that's a recipe for some bad things to happen.
My goodness. And just so for a breakdown for people, they hear assessment, they hear, they might be thinking of tests. How long does it? Yeah, it's not a test. It's effortless, in all honesty. I mean, they just ask a series of questions. It takes about 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, possibly. 10 or 15 minutes. And what I explain to people is, again, it's not a test. Yeah. If you go in thinking it's a test and I'm going to try to come up with all the best answers, you're gonna throw it all out of whack, because the way and we can tell when people are answering a certain way, when you're just trying to make sure you say all the best stuff, you're trying to gas yourself up. And it's like, I do all the things.
Their score kind of levels out in all areas.
Yeah, and it's nobody's that. Nobody's that. And so that's a conversation I have. If you get a chance to take the flight assessment, I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Listen, I for the audience,
don't take it like a test.
Yeah, don't take it like a test. And one of the things to take away from me was don't think about the answer either. Just answer the first thing that kind of comes up.
Gut reaction.
And then when I read it, and then I got with a coach like yourself who can explain the results, and I was like, man, how did this assessment that took 10-15 minutes kind of really understand my entire life? Like, it's so interesting. But these are the tools that can help you leapfrog, right?
100%.
That can help you jump ahead of the game, cutting time short, right? Like, and really making that happen. So, man, that's just tapping with Derrick, man. If you want to know about it, you can. I'm gonna have the links, all your social media handles and whatnot. But before we go, man, one of the reasons why we wanted to kind of come back and bring this podcast back, our King Tyrell, man, he's like, hey, you got to have Derrick on, and the reason is because, man, I want to celebrate you. King's Accountability is an organization. It's a professional fraternity, right? Like, if you want to just sum it all up, but you have powerful individuals in this group, and each week there's a committee that selects a Lion of the Week. And what that is we're going to give recognition to one individual who is just crushing it, killing the game at their level, like whatever it is that, it's you versus you type of thing. So it's not like, oh, King Derek is doing way more than all of us, we're going to give it to him, because there's some brothers that are struggling, but they're growing, and they get Lion of the Week. Once you get Lion of the Week, now you qualify for Lion of the Quarter. And so you go up against, it's 3 months worth of winners. And my brother, King Derek, is the Lion of the Quarter, which now puts him in the runnings for Lion of the Year. And, Derrick, man, you've been doing some phenomenal stuff. Again, husband, father, educator, speaker, coach, Prince to King's Academy. I mean, you're doing so much, man. So, kudos to you, man. Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Yeah. But kudos to you, for doing all of that, man. So I wanted to recognize you on that. But with that being said, what is your secret sauce, your formula to being able to manage so many things at a high level? Right? It's one thing when you're just busy and you're working like you're just working it. But you're a leader. You're a leader of your house. You're a leader, in your community. You're a leader in the school, right? How do you, what is the secret sauce, man? Give it to the audience, bro.
I'm gonna turn around. Do I have this book? I do. It's right here on my bookshelf. I'm gonna give you a book recommendation. It's called
The One Thing.
The One Thing. The One Thing by Gary Keller. Which most people know, named Keller, is a real estate entrepreneur, but it's a phenomenal book. And one of the things he talks about in this book is this myth of balance. Balance isn't you just carrying everything 50-50 and trying to juggle and keep everything balanced. That is not sustainable. It's just recognizing, being really, really clear on what are these buckets, what are these pillars that are really important to you, and then being able to segment your time and your energy to give each of those things what they need in that moment. Knowing that I may have to drop off a little bit over here, but it's going to be a swing. Like, I may have to go real hard. I got a presentation coming up. I got a project I'm working on. And so I got a day or two I really need to be locked in. But on the other side of that, there'll be that same energy for my wife. So she knows, okay, I know you in it deep right now, you're working on this, but then we can go do this thing, or we can go take this trip, or we can go get something to eat, or we're going to go out to the beach and go for a walk. Like, stop trying to balance everything equally all the time. That is not sustainable and is not healthy. So give yourself, but again, you also have to be clear on, I'm going to block 2 hours to do this over here, but then I'm going to spend 2 hours doing that over there. So being able to, I don't juggle it all at the same time.
Right.
I give each thing its due in its moment, and then I pivot and go on to the next thing. So you have to do that. Just being clear about that and giving yourself the space and the grace to do it wrong sometimes, but come back better with a correction.
Man, that's so good, man. That's so good. I'm looking at the time and I'm like, bro, we can really pull a Joe Rogan 3-hour session, but we ain't gonna do that to the audience. Before we go, just some advice, some tips, man. What we like to call the nugget of the day, right? What is it? The one tip, the nugget that an entrepreneur who might be struggling, or the family member who's like, man, I know there's my children struggling. If you could sum it up, it doesn't have to be just one thing, but kind of sum up how people can really elevate their life and start to walk in their dream or their goals or their desires.
For sure. Number one, be honest with yourself about where you're at right now. Self-assess. Mindset, money, health, relationships. Be brutally honest with yourself about where am I at right now? Good, bad, or indifferent. But you got to know that. You got to have a firm understanding of your baseline. Where am I at right now? Once you've figured that out, okay, what can stay? What needs to go? What needs to shift? What needs to change? Be honest about that. And then start taking positive steps, again, in each pillar. Okay, I was doing 10 things. I need to get rid of 6 of them. I'm going to focus on these 4 things. Now, how do I improve? Who do I need to get around? Who do I need to introduce myself to that's going to help me improve? And then, am I willing to work at it like there's no tomorrow?
That's good, man. Wow.
Simple.
That's powerful. Powerful.
It ain't easy.
No, not at all.
But it's simple.
As ET say, man, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody, man. That's phenomenal, man. Before you go, what is, for Derek Seymore, the guy who's doing so much, man, what does your future look like? What does the next 5-10 years look like for your coaching business, your family? What does that look like?
So I'm in year 6 of a 10-year plan that I kind of laid out. 30 years gets me to full retirement as an educator. I'm at year 24. So all of the speaking, coaching, these things I've been doing isn't doing it just to be doing. I'm really setting up my next. And what does that look like when now I freed up my time from that 9 to 5 and I can fully step into still being an educator.
Right.
But now I'm educating at scale through coaching, through speaking. I recently did an event, a virtual event where I spoke for a group of kids at Savannah State University in the Upward Bound program. Tremendous opportunity to pour into these youth and talk about, their mindsets, specific as it translates to navigating through math, but then just progressing through life. And so these opportunities are all lining up for me to set up that next of me being on a bigger stage, what God intended me to be. But I've been preparing for this. I'm not just going to step out there. I've been preparing for this for years. So building relationships, building skill, learning how to navigate lights and all of this stuff that we're doing to look all polished here in our studios. It's just more of the same. It's just building up for that next level what God has for me to be more of an impact to people using this voice from that little kid whose mom used to read him comics a long time ago.
I love it, man. And I love how it all circles back, man. So, Derek, man, appreciate you, King, for coming on and sharing with us. We could have went, man. We had some notes. We could have, this thing, like I said, we could have taken this thing 2-3 hours, but we'll definitely have you back on to share. Again, his social media handles are going to be on there, man. But I just appreciate you, the accountability, man, your leadership, the model of the father that you are, and I just want to give you your flowers, man, because, you're truly what I like to call in my inner circle, my power circle of individuals that I know if I need some type of advice or some just encouragement, man, I can tap in with you, man. So I appreciate all that you do, man. Appreciate that. And for the audience that are listening, tap in with King Derek, take the flight assessment. It won't cost you much. Tap in and trust me, it'll be the greatest investment that you would ever have, and the return on your investment. We're in a podcast model, but when Derek is working as a coach, man, he's giving you, the juices is just coming out, man. It's incredible. I've seen it. And I've seen people succeed and have high levels of success. So once again, man, thanks a lot for coming on to the podcast. And for the audience, thank you so much for tapping in with Desire to Dream podcast. Make sure you continue to like and share this podcast. If it has any value, definitely share it with somebody else, and check out his social media handles and show some love and respect. So that is it for Desire to Dream. God bless you all and have a blessed day. Peace.
Appreciate it.